You gotta show up, you gotta show up, you gotta be prepared, and you gotta be ready for that luck.
A comic close to you said, you go out of your way to pay people well. Why is that important to you?
Well, I think, the old paradigm, every comic was undervalued until they were valued. And it wasn't until you were valued that you felt appreciated, but there's so much time you felt underappreciated. I mean, I think the standard rate right now to this day is like $100 to feature, 50 to host. And I remember just going I remember my dad going, how do people afford to do this? I've done a lot of things that are different than the norm. I signed a touring deal people could argue this point or not. It kind of changed the way people started touring. A lot of people told me not to do it. They said it's better to work with all the touring agents, better work with Live Nation, AEG. And I just thought, yeah, but no one ever gave a about me, but it sounds like this guy gives a about me. And I was like, that's a really solid deal. It changed the way that promoters had to sign deals with comedians. And that deal put me in a position where my money wasn't predicated on my door sales, meaning I could make other revenue streams from whatever it is inside the venue. And so it gave us a little leverage. And Leanne said very wisely, she said, this festival is only successful if you do 11 of them. There's the only way this is successful. But in order to do 11, you got to do 2. And if you want to do 2, we got to not make money on this first one. Don't make money, give it all to the comics. Make sure the comics say to the other comics, you got to do that. That's the only way it works with comedy is you need Big J. Okerson, you need Mark Norman, you need Shane Gillis, you need Stavros to say to other people, dude, you got to do Bert's tour. Nikki Glazer has to be at the cellar going, Fully Loaded's a blast, and Bert is solid. He pays good, but more importantly, Leanne's in charge of his business, and she gave us each a $5,000 gift package with massagers and leg compression boots to travel with, and so Leanne put money into that festival, make sure the comics were taken care of, because she knew the comics were the ones spreading the word. So yeah, we try to take care of the comics, and even we have a canceled date, and then this is the stress of it is. And I think this leads into my getting out of control. It's we were supposed to get rained out for 9 shows. I mean, you could do the math somehow, but all I know is the math in my head came out to $9 million in the hole. So the stress adds up. When you're supposed to get rained out for 9 shows, you realize you cannot not pay the comedians. You got to pay the comedians. They came there. They showed up. They did what you asked them to do. So we had one show that was a rain out, and we squared up with all the comedians. So we'd love to have you back if we do it. But I totally understand. And people were comics were for real? Okay. And then they all showed up and did it. We got them rain gear just as a little extra gift, sent them a bottle of tequila. But yeah, that's Leanne. And I think that's just her witnessing how I have operated in this business and going, I know that if someone was to take care of my husband, he'd spread that word. So yeah, I've been very, 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 very lucky. When you look at the Malcolm Gladwell-esques of being at the right place at the right time, think about my life. I mean, I'm the luckiest guy you'll ever meet. I don't study at all in college, at all. My last senior year, Rolling Stone magazine writes an article about me. This is before, remember, we don't realize this is a time when fame was precious. Not everyone got to be famous. I then come out, they're still in the development deal time. That's Hollywood's still in the development deal time, where they're paying sick money to comedians to do nothing, to not work with anyone. I get to be in that part. I get to then host shows. I then get my own show. And then I get the blessing of having to start all over and doing stand-up and hosting and featuring and getting around some really brilliant comics and getting good at stand-up, becoming competent at stand-up. I get to be ponied right behind Man vs. Food on Travel Channel, the biggest. These are all lucky things in my life. I'm right after him. I get his lead in, so I get to be successful. I then run that until it's done. And then a guy I love starts a podcast that happens to be the biggest podcast in the world, and I get to be there for the salad days, to watch him make it, to watch his brain operate, for him to figure out ad sales, for him to set up ad sales relationships that then benefit me when I start my podcast, and then my podcast starts going off at the same time social media shows up when all that goes away from me, and I'm lucky enough to be at the very front lines of social media and start a career and get a viral story. And let's not just forget the fact that I'm an okay storyteller, and I happened to rob a train with the Russian mafia once that I thought I was gonna get in trouble for. It goes viral, post it, a girl in my class sees it the day I post it and comments, "This story's 100% true, he robbed us." And then that goes viral. I mean, if you look at all the lucky things that have happened in my life, the lucky, crazy, right time, right place, born at the right month, I am by far the luckiest guy in the world. You know, you wanna know a crazy lucky story? Robbie Praw is coming back from Canada and he's at customs. And the guy says to him, "What were you doing here?" And he goes, "I was shooting a special for Netflix." And the guy goes, "You a comedian?" And he said, "No, I work at Netflix." And this border agent says, "Well, I'm not gonna let you into the country until you do a deal with the machine." Robbie Praw goes, "Who the f***'s that?" And he goes, "Bert Kreischer, you need to do a special with him. So until you decide to say yes to that, I'm not gonna let you in the country." And Robbie Praw goes, "I don't know who he is." He goes, "Well, you better find out who he is." Stamps it and he goes, "Bert Kreischer, check him out." That's fucking luck. And then the next week, I'm on a flight from DC to LA with Robbie Praw. And he sees me at the gate and he goes, "Hey, I'm Robbie." I said, "I'm Bert. Very nice to meet you." What the f? I mean, you need that to happen. You gotta show up, you gotta show up, you gotta be prepared, and you gotta be ready for that luck.